We have reached the moment that no one wants to admit to, the month that has been building since the pandemic of 2020. And September is not going to be business as usual, and maybe nobody wants to admit that this is the month where power, politics, and corporations collide. Behind the scenes, wealth is being weaponized, governments are expanding surveillance and militarizing our everyday life. My name is Kamala Hurley, evidential medium and remote viewer, and I'm getting ready to share with you predictions for this September. Some mysteries never add up. The files don't match the facts. The evidence raises more questions than answers. And that's where I come in. I'm Kamala Hurley, evidential medium and intuitive investigator, and your guide into the stories that no one can explain. On Decoded, I uncover the cases that keep you up at night. Welcome to the month of September, where this is going to be a wild ride. There are going to be sudden energetic shifts, revelations, perhaps whistleblowers, epic storms that cause perhaps blackouts, as well as a direct impact on your overall health, your sense of wellness, and what it means to be an American citizen. While we get into this video, I want you to open up your intuitive abilities, and I want you to receive downloads that either contrast what I'm saying or send you into alignment and wanting to seek deeper truths. I know that you are a truth seeker. I know that you are a light worker. You are somebody that wants to make this world a better place, not just for you, but for your family, your friends, for the community at large. And understand that these predictions that I'm about to share with you are actually designed to help you energetically prepare for what is right for you. So with that, let's get into this video. I will tell you that the very first analogy that came through is that the collective feels as if there is a slow tightening noose around its neck. And what came forth from there was this image of snakes being in the barn, and that there are individuals at play in positions of power who are manipulating not just the markets, the social media landscape, but manipulating politics and policy itself. I will get into that more specifically, but I just want to share a couple things. As one, that I always download everything by hand into my notebook, and then what I do is I go back through the images and the symbols that are brought out in my downloads, in my channeling, and what I do is I also use my reason and my logic to interpret things in a different way. And sometimes I'll use like AI to verify what comes through. So one of the first things that I see is very likely for the month of September are heavy rains, thunderstorms, the possibility of hurricanes, particularly down in the Gulf of Mexico, Gulf of America, whatever you want to call it. That stretch from Texas all the way towards Florida. I just see that that area could be deeply impacted, but regardless of whether you are in the Pacific Northwest or down in the South, I see that really intense thunderstorms will be causing floods in a lot of cities. So make sure that you have supplies on hand to prepare for a 72-hour blackout. I don't think that a blackout would go on beyond the 72 hours, but I do see a lot of minor blackouts happening in suburbs and cities across America. I also have a totally free survival guide that will help you get through and how to prepare for a 72-hour blackout. The link to that is actually in the description box or the first comment right here on this video. That being said, I also started to see that the emotions connected, or sorry, how do I say it? I also see that all of the intense floods and the potential like thunderstorms that could cause these blackouts are also kind of connected to this heightened collective grief. It's almost like this grief that the world that we are living in is changing significantly. We've already started to see how much things have changed in 2025, and I understand that a lot of people are collectively fatigued. We are tired. We want a sense of normalcy, but I want to say that I don't think that's happening in September. I think that we will continue to be pushed to the limits with the environment, with our health, and with, let's even say, the political systems that are being created at the moment. I want to talk about health. I also saw that there would be a lot of people who will be susceptible to colds and viruses in the month of September. I see a lot of people with nasal drains, sinus infections, headaches, fatigue, and autoimmune conditions that are getting triggered in the month of September. So the best thing that you can start to do to build a strong immune system is to make sure that you focus on sleep, that you focus on the pillars of wellness, such as eating nutritionally dense foods and making sure that you exercise for 30 minutes if possible every single day. I'd also like to add to that list that you sit outside in natural sunlight for at least 15 minutes a day. So while you're sitting outside and you're receiving a lot of healthy natural sunlight, what if you were to focus on a mindful activity that helps improve your mindset? It could be reading a book, it could be making some art. I encourage you that these little activities that feel like you don't have time and you oftentimes don't schedule it in to your day are going to be really important for helping you have a strong immune system that isn't compromised by stress. Which brings me to what I am actually here to share with you that was the most pivotal aspect of this reading. And it came up with a download that I got here, and you can see all my energy is like shifted as I start to tell you about this. One, I saw a judicial hammer hitting a wooden block. And I think that the next thing that came through was a camera and a surveillance system that was being shown to me. And that there is a lot of fear-based policy making that is occurring at this moment that is triggering that sense of instability within each and every single one of us. Of course, you probably have guessed that I'm already talking about the types of civic protest that is occurring around the country, where we have seen protests from New York to LA, which, by the way, can no longer be discussed on social media, particularly the civil unrest that happened in Los Angeles regarding the roundup of illegal immigrants. However you feel about that, I still believe that we should have the right to talk about the events that are happening. And on platforms like TikTok, you've had to create a coded system in order to even see the types of civil protest that are occurring. Words like music festivals or LA music festivals is the only way that you can see what's happening at a street level. As NWA said in one of his rap videos, the revolution won't be televised, and I think that holds true in September 2025. Very specifically, what I see is that there will be a heated situation between the Orange Man and the Windy City. And I am talking about a place, the Windy City is known as Chicago. And again, that's sort of code speak for TikTok. I don't know if you follow me on TikTok. If you do, you'll know that I have a following of over 330,000 people there. So I'm very comfortable talking on TikTok. I'm sorry that I sometimes bring it here to YouTube because I feel like I'm a new YouTuber, relatively new to speaking to you. With that being said, did I say that already? What I want you to understand is that political structures are being tested right now. And what was brought through with the symbol of the camera and surveillance systems brought me into this sort of like spiral of revelations that have literally changed the way that I understand America today. This is regarding some important policy that is being signed off on that is going to change the lives of every American. Whether that policy is hidden or if it is made aware, I don't think each of us will feel the impact of it until it's too late. The next image that came through was that of a camera, and then I saw it connected to like a web. That to me was a symbol that is connected to surveillance. And I see that at this moment in time, that more information is being gathered about each and every citizen of America than we are aware of. And what I found interesting as these symbols came through was the next image that I had was a Roman candle firework exploding, which was immediately followed by a visual of protests, civil unrest, and Chicago. So what I believe is starting to happen is that the federal militarized police that are being installed in cities across America is connected to something that is much bigger, and I believe has yet to be spoken about on any video that I've watched. What intuitively came through is that back in 2001, when the Twin Towers came down, the Homeland Security was created, and they went about collecting information in the hopes of preventing another terrorist attack from occurring. It wasn't until a decade later, 2013, that Edward Snowden came out. And I literally have like Edward Snowden's name written down on the paper here, and I'm like, why is Edward Snowden coming up? He's not somebody I've thought about recently, but he is a mile marker of an individual that had worked for the CIA and for the NSA as a contractor, who was a whistleblower that came out about a program called PRISM. And in PRISM, like a prism with light coming through and everything being scattered, the surveillance program captured phone calls, emails, online data, biodata. It also collected financial information about every single citizen in America, which I believe is a violation of the Fourth Amendment, the right to privacy. It is why Edward Snowden came out and blew the whistle on this program, because he felt it was unethical and it was frankly illegal. As you all know, he had to escape America and landed in Russia, and I will let you know that I see that Edward Snowden is still working in the tech industry and still focused on the juxtaposition of privacy versus power. I want you to understand that he brought forth information that the collective, that the Americans weren't aware of. And it's interesting to me that he came up in the channeling, because what I see is that by 2020, when the pandemic occurred, it was the first time where government used data to regulate more health data and to regulate where you were moving, not just in your town, but actually around the world. If you remember back in 2020, you weren't actually allowed to cross the border unless you had specific medical guarantees that you had taken a vaccine. So to me, I find this aspect really interesting because it's getting into how we got to where we are in 2025. I believe that all of the data collection that has occurred since 2025 has been compiled into a single file that is connected to each and every single one of us. And intuitively, what I see is that there's some kind of social merit within every person's social security number. There is a social merit system that is connected to your data. AI will accelerate understanding and interpreting your data. And not only is government working to build these systems in the name of safety, but that it has worked with other corporations involved in big tech, big pharma, the medical system, as well as the media system. All of these individuals are concentrating power into the hands of a few individuals, which brought me down a rabbit hole of understanding what it means when private equity or oligarchies actually reduce power and how it impacts democracy. So I'm just going to go through a couple of touch points that I think are important to mention. One, the concentration of economic power means that there are fewer competitors and just a handful of firms that actually control entire sectors, such as hospitals, housing, media, social media. And when these firms are in control of these types of assets, their focus is on maximizing returns and financial gain for investors. It's not about serving the public. That concentrated power actually erodes the free market, and it actually prevents the natural checks and balances that are in place that prevent exploitation. So it creates these monopoly-like conditions. The second thing is when there is this type of economic power, it also leads to political capture. And that's where private equity firms, as well as certain powerful corporations, use their vast resources to influence lawmakers through lobbying, campaign donations, and with those fewer competitors, there's fewer dissenting voices within each industry, making it easier for firms to shape regulation in their favor, particularly as it impacts the market. This leads to not just political capture, but to regulatory capture. And that's where the rules are meant to protect the public are actually rewritten to protect the financial elites. That is what leads to the weakening of democratic accountability. Democracy actually thrives when diverse interests can organize and compete. Market domination actually narrows influence and innovation. That actually can lead to citizens having less choices in the marketplace, and that the decision about essential goods and services like healthcare, housing, and jobs become increasingly small, and that oftentimes those decisions about what's essential are made in private boardrooms rather than in public debate. I know that that's a lot to take in. The next aspect that I wanted to share that is part of this download is that there is the erosion of civic trust. This is when people feel that corporations and financiers actually hold all the power and they lose faith in the democratic process. Is this starting to feel like September 2025? Let me know in the comments. Because when there's raising inequality, when there are job losses from cost-cutting measures made by private equity groups as well as these corporations, it means that it also leads to higher consumer prices. And I know from the hundreds of readings that I do a month that a lot of people are panicking about what to do financially because they're not able to get a job. I know people who are using AI agents that have hundreds of resumes sent out to corporations at the same time who have masters and are highly skilled at the work that they do, who are not even getting job interviews. With high prices when it comes to purchasing food, rising housing costs, as well as less jobs, this starts to lead to the erosion of democracy. And this is a system that then sets up for making billionaires trillionaires, if you understand what I'm saying. This system is not set up for ordinary people, and it's what's causing a lot of anger. It's causing more polarization and instability, not just in the markets, but in our personal lives, which is why I want to say when this type of authoritarian movement gets started, you need to tap into your intuition and use your voice in peaceful ways to protest. Because we have finally gotten to a point in September of 2025 where we have to look at how democracy and the oligarchy are starting to be unchecked. It is concentrated power, and that's where it's just a few powerful elites with wealth and capital that are shifting policy. That's why I don't really think it matters if you're red or blue, conservative or liberal, because it is the elite that are backing the politicians. They are just, to me, puppets. In short, when private equity dominates the market, it stifles competition, it chips away at the balance between economic freedom and democratic equality. It risks turning democracy into something more performative, where, like, let's say, sorry. It risks turning democracy into something more performative than real, where citizens vote, but it doesn't matter. And the true levers of power are held by concentrated financial elites. I believe that part of what my download brought through is not just connected to this, but it's understanding that the systems of surveillances that have been installed since the Twin Towers fell in 2001, that it has been capturing data about each and every single one of us for 25 years. Not only has that information been captured about each and every single one of us for the last 25 years, we now have AI and predictive patterning as tools to estimate what actually is the vibe of America. I believe that there possibly could be information that has been given to the Orange Man, the President of the United States, that has informed him of the potential possibility of a civil war. And I think that's why we have militarized police going into each of these cities. At least that's what came through here. That's why I saw the camera, the surveillance systems. It's why I saw the Roman candle, and why Edward Snowden, as well as the pandemic of 2020, came up, because these are all instances where fear created policy that enabled the government to overreach and overstep into the privacy of our lives. We can also see that social media platforms have taken advantage of this, such as Facebook. In the early days of Facebook, you can read a book called Careless People, and it was written by an individual that was in charge of public policy, global policy for Facebook. And in that book, which I have nearly read, I learned that they understood the type of data that was being collected when each and every single one of us took pictures of our families, took pictures of our foods, our vacations, our pets, and uploaded it to the platform. We haven't fully realized the way that tech has used data to not just sell it to other corporations, for example, in order to sell ads or to offer media buying opportunities to other businesses. Social media apps understood that the psychology of an individual could be altered by the algorithm of content that they were served. That piece we'll start to understand more in the next 3 to 5 years, but as far as it goes with September 2025, my advice is this. I do believe if you go to any of these peaceful protests that your information is being cataloged and put into a file about you. And I do have this sneaking feeling that that information will be given to, let's say, this social merit system, and that certain companies might have access to it, and it might be critical when it comes to a hiring decision. So be aware of the places that you go, be aware of what you do online, of what you say and how you say it, because I think that it's very important to make sure that you don't end up in some kind of situation where it can be used against you. And I know that that makes a lot of sense. We have the right to public assembly, but just make sure that you do so peacefully. So how did we get here to September 2025? It is through a lot of other factors have played into this. This month, September, marks more conscious awareness around policy, around power, about hidden agendas. And I think that what we need to do is continue to approach this as a period of empowerment. And the way that we can be empowered and step into our own inner authority and sovereignty is through practical, peaceful steps of protest. So one of the ways that you can lead change for yourself, I would suggest, is to limit the data that you willingly give to corporations and other like other platforms, whatever that is, social media, media. Be aware of the type of data that you are giving out for free. I also would want to advocate that you use community in the area where you live to not just connect with other people, but to exchange resources or learn something new from somebody else. Like sharing resources, ideas, wisdoms, having conversations, supporting one another, I think is really important in your physical community as well as online. So community and sharing your ideas with like-minded individuals is super important. I hope that this community is a place where you feel safe downloading what some of your intuitive ideas are in the comments section and letting me know what you got from this video. I'd love to read it. I also want to say privacy tools are really important. Using encrypted messaging will be important for the month of September, as well as offering choosing to not empower corporations that abuse their power. So if you are seeing a company that's abusing power and resources and you don't like how that corporation or company is operating, choose alternatives. You have the power to make that impact, but with the way you spend your money. I think that conscious consumption is really what I'm getting to, and that you need to withdraw your money and your energy, your time and your focus from those corporations that abuse power. Creative expression is one of the most incredible ways to share ideas, and it's very hard for a militarized police officer to point a weapon at you if you're simply singing a song, if you are writing a poem, if you are making art. And that's something that you could do at a public protest. That's also something that you could do at the safety of your home, because there are many coded ways that we can communicate ideas without having to be direct, particularly if platforms don't allow for direct communication. There are coded ways to communicate. I also want you to understand that practicing a nonviolent approach to dissent or to just sharing your opinion, maybe you appreciate certain things but other aspects you question, I just say look for nonviolent ways to do this. It is a way to have a healthy conversation, and it's essential. There are definitely moments and places and times where the frustration of not being heard gets to the point of civil war, which is ultimately what I have a fear is brewing. I think that's part of why these military agents and police officers are being installed in every city across the country. It's because there is an understanding based off of AI and predictive patterning tools that I think the government understands. There's so much civil unrest. There's such a dichotomy between the wealthy and the poor, between the haves and the have-nots, that this type of civil unrest could lead to civil war. So before we get there, I think it's important to understand what inner alignment is for you. Taking time to soften your nervous system through taking hikes in nature, through forest bathing, which is a conscious approach to being in nature. I think that sound healing is really important. Prayer circles, maybe group meditations, breath works, taking care of your health, cooking, bringing community together through a physical activity like yoga can be ways that you can have your voice heard. So I think that the energy of September is really about how to build peace within and how to stay healthy through a season of intense energy, because when you choose a conscious routine, you are aligning with compassionate action and creating like local community or sharing your ideas in the comments below with this online community that we have is another way for you to reclaim your inner authority, your sovereignty, and to feel empowered with what we're going through. Because unlike 2020, where many of us just chose to mask up and follow everything that the government said, only to find out 3 years later that the vaccines are ineffective and the masks that we were forced to wear and standing 6 feet apart, it was actually all a lie. While the corporate leaders and even the policymakers like Fauci have been granted pardons so that they are never brought to trial, I understand that each and every single one of us choose to not forget. So let's make this transformation that we are going through a powerful one, and one that's advocating for peace, because I think that we can make peaceful transformation, not just in our lives, but in society. And that's what I advocate for the month of September. Love to know what you think about this. I also want to say that building your own business is a way to get dissent into action. And I know that sounds like a weird way, but my idea is that everything is not owned by BlackRock, for example, that we actually start businesses, product-based businesses, as well as service-based businesses to help the collective. And there's been a lot of policy that has shifted over the course of the last 9 months. So when I see that like 10 to 20 million people are losing Medicare, I see this as an opportunity for complementary and alternative medicine to support healing. Whether it's through Reiki, homeopathy, or mediumship, or any other way that you choose to get support, I think that this is where light workers and healers will shine. So don't see every setback as a tragedy. Perhaps there's opportunity to bring greater balance to the world that we're living in. So while I think there are going to be some heavy civil protests this month, I want you to focus on anchoring in to what is right for you.